Leora sat on the cold metal bench, hugging her knees close to her chest. The adoption hall was bright and quiet, but it felt empty to her. Around her, other children and alien species waited with families. Their parents talked softly, laughed, or held hands with the children they had chosen. But no one had chosen her. No one would. She had known that for a long time. Her skin was pale silver blue, her hair a soft violet that shimmered faintly under the lights. She was small for her age, but that was not the only reason she had been left behind. People said she was different. Some whispered that her eyes were too big, that she was too quiet, that her species felt emotions too deeply. They called it weakness. Leora had learned to sit very still, to smile when necessary, and to pretend she did not feel the sadness that swelled inside her chest. "No one will ever adopt me," she whispered to herself. Her voice was so soft that even the hum of the station machinery almost swallowed it. She pulled her knees tighter, wishing she could disappear. She watched a family walk past, holding hands with a small green-skinned child. The child waved at her, but the family did not look. Leora looked away. Across the hall, a human walked slowly. His uniform was worn, faded, and covered in small scratches and patches. He moved with the careful steps of someone who had spent years on alert, someone who had seen too much. His name was Calder Vance. He had been a soldier, a veteran of long campaigns across distant star systems, but now he carried the quiet weight of someone who had fought too many battles. He was not here to adopt a child. He had no plans to touch her life at all. But something made him pause. The corner of the hall, where a single girl sat alone, drew his attention. He could not explain why. Maybe it was the way she hugged herself. Maybe it was the way she seemed invisible yet painfully aware of the world. Her silence was not empty. It was filled with waiting, with fear, with a small, quiet hope that had been ignored too many times. Leora's eyes flicked up when she sensed someone looking at her. Calder did not move closer. He just watched quietly as she whispered again, "No one will ever adopt me." The words struck him harder than he expected. They were not just words, they were a truth she had lived every day, a truth that mirrored something he had once known. Years ago, after the wars, he had felt the same hopelessness, the same feeling of being unwanted. But unlike her, he had survived by choosing to keep moving forward, even when it seemed there was no reason. The station staff moved around them, ignoring the pair. They were used to children like Leora. Children who were left behind, children who did not fit the expectations of families, children who were too fragile or too strange. Many had given up hope, and some had learned to hide the sadness deep inside. Leora shifted slightly. She had felt eyes on her before, but she had trained herself not to care. She stared at the floor and whispered once more, "No one will ever want me. I am too different. I am too small. I am too quiet. No one will ever care." Calder stepped closer this time, but not too close. He did not want to startle her. He spoke softly so only she could hear, "You are not invisible. I see you." Leora froze. No one had ever said that to her before. People looked at her, yes, but they never really saw her. Not the quiet trembling, not the fear, not the small hope she tried to hide. She looked up, her large violet eyes meeting his. There was no judgment in his gaze, no pity, no rush. Just quiet attention. I am too strange," she whispered. "I am too different. No one will ever take me." Calder shook his head gently. "Different does not mean unwanted," he said. "Sometimes people need to learn how to see. Sometimes people need to understand that being different is a gift." Leora blinked. A gift? No one had ever called her that. No one had ever said that her feelings, her size, her quietness could be something anyone wanted. She wanted to ask more, but the words stuck in her throat. The staff walked by again. They did not notice the conversation. They assumed the human had come and gone or that he was just passing by. Calder let her have the space, but he stayed close enough that she could sense him. Minutes passed. Leora whispered small words to herself. Calder did not interrupt. He simply listened, letting her speak the truth she had held inside for so long. He could hear the fear in her voice, the loneliness, the worry that she would always be alone. Finally she said, almost in a whisper, maybe no one will ever care." Calder knelt down slightly, enough that he was at her level. He did not force a smile. He did not pretend to understand everything. He simply said, "I care. I don't know everything about you and I don't know what the future will hold, but I care right now. That counts for something." Leora's heart skipped a beat. No one had ever said that. No one had ever said that a human, even one she had never met, could care about her. She wanted to believe it, but it was hard. Hope was dangerous and she had learned that hope could break easily. I don't think anyone has ever said that to me, she whispered, her voice trembling. Then maybe it is time someone did, Calder replied softly. For the first time in her life, Leora did not feel invisible. The weight on her chest lifted just a little. She did not know what would happen next. Maybe she would be sent away. Maybe someone else would choose her and she would be left behind again. But for now she felt seen. She felt noticed. And that small, fragile feeling, hope, began to grow inside her. The station continued its quiet bustle. Families walked by. Children laughed. And in the corner, Leora sat a little taller, letting herself breathe. She did not say it out loud, but deep inside she wondered if maybe, just maybe, someone would not leave her behind this time. Calder stood slowly and gave her a small nod. He did not make promises. He only stayed, only watched, only cared. And for Leora, that was enough to begin dreaming of a world where she might belong. The station hall felt quieter now. Most families had left with their children, leaving Leora and Calder in the corner. Leora still sat with her knees hugged close, but she was calmer. Calder did not speak much. He simply watched her, noticing the small details she did not even know mattered. The faint shimmer in her violet hair, the way her tiny hands fidgeted, the nervous twitch of her ears when someone passed too close. I am used to being left behind, Leora said softly, almost to herself. People see me and then, they go. They never stay. Calder nodded. He understood. Not exactly her life, of course, but he knew what it felt like to be ignored, to be left in a place where nobody cared if you survived or not. He had seen friends fall in battle, watched colonies burn, felt the silence of people he could not save. He had learned early that survival was not about strength alone. It was about being there when it mattered, even when everything seemed lost. Loss? It changes people, he said quietly. Sometimes it makes you stronger. Sometimes it makes you afraid. I know both. Leora looked at him, curious. She had never met a human before, at least not like this. Others had been loud, impatient, or distant. Calder was none of those things. He spoke slowly, carefully, as if his words were being chosen from a place deep inside. I am scared, she admitted. Her voice shook. I don't want anyone to leave me. I don't want to hope and then be alone again. Calder sat down on the bench beside her, keeping a respectful distance. I know that feeling. And it is hard. You want to trust someone but you have been burned before. That is normal. And it does not mean there is anything wrong with you. It means you are brave. Brave? She repeated. Her voice was uncertain. She had never thought of herself as brave. Being brave sounded loud, strong like a warrior. She was small. She was quiet. She cried when she was alone. How could that be brave? Brave is not only fighting, Calder said. Bravery is feeling pain and still trying. It is being small and scared and still standing. That is exactly what you are doing right now. Leora did not know what to say. The words were too big, too strange, but they felt good. Warm. She could not remember the last time someone had said something that made her feel safe instead of awkward or unwanted. The station staff passed by again. They were checking forms, schedules, and protocols, not noticing the small connection forming in the corner. Some of them glanced at Leora, shaking their heads slightly. They had seen children like her before. Too sensitive, they whispered. Not ready for adoption. Calder did not care. He ignored them. He was not here to judge. He was here to listen. Why? Why are you talking to me? Leora finally asked. No one ever talks to me. No one cares. I don't even know your name. Calder, he said simply. Calder Vance. I am a human. And I am listening. That is all I am doing. You don't have to answer me. You don't have to trust me. I just wanted you to know that someone sees you. Leora thought about that. Seeing someone. That alone was something she had wanted for years, maybe her whole life. She did not know why this human cared or why he had stopped in this corner instead of walking past like everyone else. But she felt a small spark inside, a fragile hope that maybe not everyone would leave. You are different from the others, she whispered. I mean, the humans. I have heard stories. Humans are loud, strong, fighters. You are quiet. You don't seem scary. Calder smiled a little. Not a big smile, just enough to make her feel he was honest. We can be many things, he said. Some humans fight with strength. Some fight with words. Some fight by staying when it is easier to leave. I'm trying that way today. Leora's eyes widened. You are staying? I am, Calder said. I don't know what will happen next. I don't know if we will be friends, or if this will change your life or mine. I just know that right now, I am here. And I will not leave while you are still sitting alone in this hall. Her chest felt tight. She wanted to believe him. But she also wanted to hide. Hope was dangerous. It had let her down so many times. She did not want to be crushed again. You don't even know me, she whispered. That is true, Calder said. But I can learn. And I can listen. And maybe that is enough for now. They sat in silence for a while, watching the lights of the station flicker. Outside, ships glided past the observation windows, leaving bright trails in the void. Inside, two very different beings sat together. One small, fragile, full of fear. The other quiet, strong in ways that did not show. And for a few moments, the world felt safer than it had ever felt before. Leora finally whispered, I think I like that. That someone sees me. Calder nodded. That is important. Never forget that. Even if the universe seems big and cold, someone can see you. And when that happens, it changes everything. She looked up at him, and for the first time in a long time, she did not look away. She felt a tiny part of her fear melt. It did not disappear, but it became smaller, easier to manage. She realized she could breathe again. Calder noticed the change. He did not speak, only nodded slightly. Sometimes words were not enough. Sometimes the act of staying, of quietly being there, mattered more than anything else. Leora whispered once more, this time almost to herself, maybe someone will stay. Calder placed a hand lightly on his knee, close enough that she could sense the human warmth nearby, but not touching her. Maybe, he said softly. And maybe that is the start of something new. You deserve someone who stays. And even if it is just one person at first, that is enough to begin. For the first time that day, Leora felt the fragile warmth of trust. It was not full hope, not yet. But it was enough to open a small door in her heart. And behind that door, a new possibility began to grow. A possibility that someone at last would not leave. The next day, the adoption center felt even colder. Leora sat on the same metal bench, her small hands clasped in her lap. She had not slept well, thinking about the human who had stayed with her yesterday. Calder Vance. His words had been gentle, his presence quiet but strong. She could not stop wondering why he had stayed. Most people left. Most people never noticed her. Calder arrived later that morning. He walked slowly, carefully, carrying a small folder of papers. Leora noticed immediately. He looked serious, tired, but determined. He did not rush. He did not seem nervous. He simply came toward her corner and nodded once, as if greeting an old friend. Good morning, he said softly. Are you ready to try something new today? Leora's eyes widened. Try something? What do you mean? Calder sat down at a careful distance, keeping his voice calm. I asked if I could be your temporary guardian. The staff is checking it now. I do not know if it will be approved, but we can try. If they say yes, you can spend time with me outside the hall. You do not have to decide anything yet. But it is a start. Leora wanted to speak, but her throat felt tight. Her small heart beat fast. People had promised things before and broken them. Families had looked at her, smiled, and then walked away. She had been left so many times. Could she trust this human? Could she hope again? What if you leave? She whispered finally. Calder shook his head slowly. I do not know what the future will hold. No one can promise that. But I can promise this, I will not leave today. I will not leave while you sit alone in this hall. That is enough for now. Leora hesitated, then nodded slightly. Her lips trembled. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to feel safe. For the first time, a part of her dared to hope. The staff soon came over, their expressions serious. Human Vance, one said, your request for temporary guardianship is unusual. Protocols usually reserve this for approved families of the same species. Are you aware of the rules? I am aware, Calder said calmly. I know it is unusual. But I am willing to follow the rules. I only want to give the child a chance to not be alone. Another staff member frowned. The child has been marked as sensitive. High emotional risk. Most guardians are advised against taking her. You are a veteran. Do you understand the challenges? Calder nodded. I understand. That is why I am asking. I do not want easy. I want to do what is right. I will not abandon her. Leora watched quietly. She could feel the tension in the room, the whispers of disapproval from the staff. But she also felt something new, Calder's calm strength. He did not argue loudly. He did not raise his voice. He only stood firm, quietly. And for the first time, Leora thought maybe there could be someone who would stay. The staff exchanged looks. One of them sighed. Very well. Temporary guardianship is approved for observation. The human will accompany the child for the next 7 days. Any issues and the arrangement will be reviewed. Leora's small shoulders relaxed. She wanted to speak, but no words came. She only looked at Calder, her eyes wide, filled with a mix of fear and cautious hope. Calder smiled softly. "Shall we go then?" he asked. "Just for a walk. Nothing fancy. Just a start." They left the hall together. Leora's steps were hesitant at first, but she matched Calder's pace. Outside the station, the corridor lights reflected on the glass windows. Ships flew past in silent arcs, leaving streaks of light. For Leora it was a new world. She had always watched from behind glass, always hidden, always left behind. Now she walked beside someone who had chosen to be there. For the next several hours they explored quiet parts of the station. Calder let her look at things she liked. Floating gardens, tiny robots cleaning the floors, the small library with books from many worlds. He did not force conversation, only answered questions and listened. Sometimes he told stories of his travels, of strange planets and creatures he had met. Leora listened with wide eyes. She was learning that humans were not only fighters as stories had said, they were patient, gentle, and capable of quiet care. When they returned to the adoption center, Leora's hands were no longer tightly clasped. She walked beside Calder without looking down. The staff watched, surprised. She had never walked like that before. She had never trusted anyone enough to do that. That night, back in her small room, Leora whispered to herself, maybe someone really will stay. Calder's words from earlier echoed in her mind. Bravery is feeling pain and still trying. Being small and scared and still standing. She realized she had been brave all along, even if she did not see it. She had survived the waiting, the being ignored, the loneliness. And now she had someone who did not leave. The next day Calder returned. This time the staff was more cautious. "Human Vance," one said, "the child is showing signs of attachment. You must understand this is unusual. Continue carefully." Calder nodded. "I will. I'm not here to break rules. I am here to help her grow safely. That is all." Leora felt a small courage rise in her chest. She approached Calder. Will you come again tomorrow?" "I will," he said. "And the day after. And the day after that if it is allowed. I will not leave while you are waiting." She wanted to smile but only nodded. That small nod carried more than words. It was a choice. A choice to trust him even a little. And Calder's quiet presence answered that choice. For the first time, Leora felt a door open in her heart. The door to hope, to trust, to a life where she might not be alone. She did not know what would happen next. She did not know if the guardianship would become permanent. She only knew that for the first time she had chosen someone, and that someone had chosen her back. And sometimes that was enough to change everything. Days passed since Leora had walked beside Calder. Each day the temporary guardianship continued, and slowly, something changed in the quiet adoption hall. Leora laughed once or twice, small, careful laughs, when Calder showed her a tiny floating robot spinning in circles. She did not notice the staff watching, their expressions shifting from doubt to surprise. The child who had been labeled too sensitive was beginning to thrive. Calder noticed it too. Leora was still cautious. She still flinched at sudden noises, still hesitated when others approached. But she also asked questions, shared small stories about her life, and even offered a shy smile when someone said something kind. Calder had never expected this. He had thought he could only give her safety, guidance, and attention. He had not realized that simply staying, simply noticing, could teach her to believe in the world again. Word began to spread quietly across the station. Other guardians, staff, and even some visiting families whispered about the unusual pairing. Humans had never been known for adopting alien children so openly. Many species believed humans were too rough, too impatient, too warlike to care for those who were fragile. But Calder was proving them wrong. Leora was not only surviving, she was growing. One evening, during a quiet observation period, a group of alien officials came to see Leora. They were serious, with sharp features and eyes that seemed to read thoughts. "We have never seen a human interact with a child of this species successfully," one said. "Usually they fail. The child's sensitivity overwhelms them, or the humans grow impatient. How is this possible?" Calder answered simply, without arrogance. "I do not know if it is possible. I only know what is right. I stay. I listen. I care. That is enough." The officials looked at Leora, who was quietly drawing in a small sketchbook. She had drawn a scene of them all floating in space together, ships passing, stars shining. She had never done anything like this before. Usually she hid, afraid someone would judge her. But with Calder she had courage. "This is unusual," another official murmured. "The child is showing confidence, curiosity, and calmness. None of these are common for her kind at this stage. Perhaps humans can offer something we underestimated." Calder did not smile. He simply nodded. He did not care about praise or recognition. His goal was simple: to give the child a safe place to grow, and to be there when others would not. And that, he had realized, was already enough to challenge the galaxy's assumptions. Leora noticed the officials whispering, and for the first time she did not feel afraid. She looked at Calder, her violet eyes wide. "Are they talking about me?" "Yes," he said gently. "But they are noticing something important. Something you already know. You are brave. You are kind. And you are learning to trust. That matters more than rules or expectations." She smiled faintly. It was a small smile, but it felt like sunlight after a long night. Calder noticed it too. He understood that the smallest signs of growth could carry the greatest weight. The next week, Calder and Leora spent more time exploring the station. They visited quiet gardens with glowing plants, libraries filled with stories from many worlds, and observation decks where they watched distant planets spin silently. Calder answered Leora's endless questions with patience, never rushing, never correcting harshly. She began to ask things she had never shared before. Dreams, fears, small stories of her life before the adoption hall. Calder listened to every word. Word continued to spread. Other species started asking quietly, how could a human, known for war and survival, succeed where their own kind had failed? The answer was simple, but no one expected it. Humans did not rule by fear or authority. Humans stayed. Humans carried responsibility even when it was difficult. Humans noticed what others ignored. One day the station director called Calder. "Human Vance," she said, "it seems your methods are working. Leora is thriving. This is unprecedented. Most humans would have left by now, yet you have stayed. Why?" Calder looked at her calmly. "I do not know if it is unique. I only know it is right. A child should not be left behind. That is all. Strength is not always power. Sometimes strength is staying when leaving is easier." The director paused. She had not expected that answer. Across the galaxy, civilizations measured strength in control, in weapons, in dominance. But here, in this quiet adoption hall, strength had a new meaning. And she, like many others, began to reconsider what humans were truly capable of. Leora noticed the change too. Staff began treating her differently, not with pity but with respect. They watched her grow, helped her when needed, but allowed her to make small choices. She began to understand that being small and sensitive was not a weakness. With Calder, she learned that even the smallest actions, drawing a picture, speaking a word, trusting someone, could carry great power. Late one evening, as the station lights dimmed and the stars outside glittered, Leora whispered to Calder, Do you think the galaxy will understand humans someday?" Calder smiled faintly. "Maybe. But it does not matter if they understand right now. What matters is that you do. You see humans differently because you have experienced one up close. That is what counts. One person, one child, one choice, it can change many things quietly." Leora thought about that. She realized she felt safe. She realized she felt brave. She realized that the galaxy's opinion did not matter as much as Calder's presence. And she understood something else. Humans, with all their flaws and wars, could show a kind of strength that the galaxy had not expected. As she looked out at the stars, her hand brushing Calder's lightly for comfort, she whispered once more, "Maybe humans are stronger than anyone knows." Calder nodded. He did not need to reply. She had learned the lesson herself. Strength was not measured by weapons or power. It was measured by compassion, by quiet responsibility, by the courage to stay when leaving would be easier. And for Leora, that quiet lesson changed everything. The days passed quietly, but for Leora, each one felt full of new life. She walked through the station with Calder beside her, exploring small gardens, libraries, and observation decks. She laughed more now, soft but genuine, and sometimes, just sometimes, she even ran, her small legs moving faster than before. Calder did not rush her. He never forced her to be brave or strong. He only stayed with her, giving her the gift of safety, patience, and trust. Other children noticed. Some came close, curious about the pair who seemed so different yet so calm together. Leora had always been afraid of other children, thinking they would mock her or abandon her like adults had. But now she found herself speaking quietly, sharing small stories and listening to others without fear. Calder noticed her courage. It was quiet courage, not loud or showy, but it was there, growing stronger every day. The staff continued to watch. Some shook their heads in disbelief, whispering about the unusual human and the alien child. No human could do this, they said. They do not have the patience. Others were silent, unsure what to say. Leora thrived, asking questions, drawing, exploring. She was not afraid anymore. And slowly, they began to understand that Calder's quiet presence, his refusal to leave, was teaching her something more important than any rule or training could. Calder himself noticed the change in the station. Other species, once skeptical, began to speak quietly among themselves. Perhaps humans are not what we thought, one elder said. They do not dominate, but they endure. They stay when others leave. That is strength we did not measure. Leora overheard a fragment of this conversation and looked at Calder, her violet eyes wide. Do you think I helped them see that? She asked softly. Calder smiled faintly. You helped them see it because you lived it. You showed them that bravery and kindness can be stronger than fear or control. And you learned it too. That is what matters. Weeks later, the temporary guardianship ended. Leora expected that Calder would leave. She expected rules and protocols to take over, and the hall to feel cold again. But when she saw him standing at the entrance, the folder of forms in his hand, she felt something she had never felt before. Hope. Human Vance, one staff member said, your guardianship is ending. You must submit your request for permanent adoption now if you wish to continue. Calder looked at Leora, then back at the staff. I wish to continue, he said simply. I will not leave her. Not today, not tomorrow, not ever if I can help it. Leora's small hand trembled as she reached out, touching his sleeve lightly. You really mean that? I do, he said gently. I do not know everything the future will bring. I do not know what will happen. But I do know this, I will not abandon you. And that is a promise I can keep. Tears filled Leora's eyes. She had never believed someone could promise that and truly mean it. She had never thought a human could stay, could care so quietly, could be strong in ways that did not need shouting or power. The staff processed the request. Few spoke. Some took notes. Others simply watched, quietly amazed at the bond between human and alien child. They had never seen anything like it. Calder did not argue or fight for approval. He only stayed, quietly patient, quietly caring, and that was enough. When the adoption was approved, it was quiet. No celebration, no fanfare. Just two lives that had chosen each other, standing together in a hall that had once seemed cold and empty. Leora did not shout with joy. She simply smiled, a small, bright smile that reflected relief, trust, and cautious happiness. Calder returned the smile with his quiet nod, and together, they stepped forward into the next chapter of their lives. Outside, the stars shone through the station windows. Ships passed in silent arcs. The galaxy continued, unaware of the small, quiet change in a corner of the station. But for those who saw it, it was significant. The galaxy had begun to learn something new about humans. Strength was not measured by dominance, weapons, or power. Strength was measured by responsibility, compassion, and the courage to stay when leaving would be easier. Leora's small voice spoke finally, breaking the silence. Do you think humans are really strong like that? Calder crouched to her level. We can be, he said simply. Some of us fail, some of us succeed. But the ones who stay, who care, who protect even when it is hard, that is strength. That is what matters. Leora thought about all the time she had been left behind. She thought about the fear she had carried, the whispers of rejection, the long hours of loneliness. And she realized something important. She had survived. She had grown. And with Calder, she had learned that being brave was not about fighting battles. It was about standing when it is easier to hide. It was about trusting someone even a little when the world had told her no one would. Calder extended his hand. Leora took it, small and careful but with steady courage. Together they walked down the corridor, past the staff, past the observation windows, past the familiar hallways of the station. Leora felt lighter, braver, stronger in ways she had never imagined. And for Calder, he felt the quiet satisfaction of knowing that human strength was not in the battles he had fought, not in the wars he had survived, but in the lives he could touch quietly with patience, care, and honesty. The galaxy may not have noticed yet, but in one small corner, a child had learned trust, and a human had shown what strength truly was. And sometimes that was enough to change many hearts quietly, one small act at a time. As Leora glanced at Calder, she whispered, "Thank you for staying." Calder nodded. "Always. I will always stay." The stars outside continued to shine, silent witnesses to the quiet lesson. Real strength is not in power. It is in care, courage, and staying when others leave. And in the hearts of Leora and Calder, that lesson would last forever.